Toussaint was a bit of an international man of mystery. And I didn't know him very well. I wouldn't claim to know him very well. I don't know that many people knew him really well. I think he was very... he was a musician. You know, not all musicians are naturally comfortable performing. Allen, I mean, I've read the same stuff as everybody else has read. But he did gigs and went out and did a few tours and decided that wasn't the life for him. And he had the ability to... He had this rare ability, rare in this city, an ability to organize musicians. Now, it's like herding cats. Can you imagine trying to organize anybody in New Orleans, but especially musicians? It's impossible. But he got hired because he could do it, and he didn't put up with any nonsense. But I think he was successful, not because he was a good businessman, but I think he had enough sense to team up with a tough businessman who wasn't necessarily a very popular character amongst a lot of musicians, at least. And formed a partnership which was good for him, really. And he got a studio and wrote songs and arranged songs. And he was always writing. I did a tour with him one time. It was me and him and Henry Butler. And our dressing rooms were next to each other. And Alan was in there humming and writing, and the door would be a little bit open. I'd see him with a piece of paper and a pencil. And he was writing a song.
Yeah, and we were drinking champagne with Henry Butler every night.
But he was always coming up with ideas. I liked him. He was always very nice to me. But I think he was very shy. And you're supposed to be gregarious in this business. You know, you're supposed to be a big personality. And I've often found the best musicians are the opposite of that, but they put on a good show of it. I don't think he even bothered to try and put on a show. But he did seem to enjoy the last few years of his life after Katrina, when he was forced to go out on the road. And I think, to his surprise, kind of found that he was digging it, and especially digging the fact that he was getting a lot of attention and a lot of respect, because he was always someone that was behind the scenes. And I think he was happier with a pencil and some manuscript paper, solving musical problems and getting ideas done. But I think he was very tenacious and very disciplined. I think he did a huge volume of stuff as part of The Secret. Not everything he did was successful. Not everything he did was a hit. But he just kept at it and kept doing it over and over and over again. And so a lot of the good ideas came through and made a big difference. Dave Bartholomew was the guy before him that had that ability. If they wanted to make a record in New Orleans, they would go to Dave Bartholomew, because they knew that they would say, this is what we want to do, this is how much we got, can you do it? And if he said yes, then they knew he was a man of his word and it would get done. And I think it was the same with Allen Toussaint. He was dependable, which immediately gave him a huge advantage in this place. But he wrote loads of songs. His career spanned several decades, and he did some stuff that was pretty basic and some stuff that was very sophisticated. My first introduction to Allen Toussaint, without realizing it, were three things, really. Because when I was a kid, there was two television programs a week in England that were music programs. One was Top of the Pops, which we all watched at school every Thursday night at 7:20 and discussed at school the next day on Friday. And then the other one, if your mum and dad let you stay up late, was the Old Grey Whistle Test, which was for real serious progressive rock listeners, and nothing flamboyant about that. I mean, nothing... I can't even think what I'm saying. But I have another quick sip. Hold on.
Have some more alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I got turned on to a radio station that was broadcasting outside British territorial waters, and therefore outside the restricted zone, from a ship in the North Sea called Radio Caroline. And on Radio Caroline, I would tune in. As soon as I got home every night, we we had a stereo with a little pair of headphones with a very short cable on the headphones. And the only way you could listen on the headphones was if you actually stood in front of the amp, the stereo. And so while the rest of the family was watching television, I'd be standing facing the wall for hours on end with these headphones on, hoping that this DJ called Dr. Boogie would come on, because I knew if he came on, he would play Lady Marmalade by LaBelle, which blew my mind. He'd also play Sneaking Sally and Sailing Shoes by Robert Palmer, and he would play Brickyard Blues by Frankie Miller from Scotland. So he had a Scottish singer, an English singer, and Patti LaBelle, an American singer. And these 3 records, I loved them. Something about that stuff I loved. And at the same time, I was hearing Fats Domino and Clarence Frogman Henry and Clifton Chenier from the records that my uncle had brought back from New Orleans. But this other stuff, there was a sound that, man, I discovered this on my own, and it blew me away. And it wasn't until years later that I realized that Allen Toussaint was really the brains behind those 3 songs. So Brickyard Blues, I loved. Frankie Miller was a great R&B singer. And another uncle of mine, Uncle Steve Simpson, was in his band. So there was a link there. And it's, change the key. Well, I tried to run my game. She said, man, that's the same old thing I heard before. I'm too tired to go for your show. Said again and again. Tried to explain. I said, man, I ain't say what you're playing. Just can't make it. I'm too tired to fake it anymore. Play something sweet, play something mellow, play something I can sink my teeth in like Jello. Play something I can understand now. Play me some Brickyard Blues. Play something sweet, now make it funky. Let me lay back and grin like a monkey. Play something I can understand now. Play me some Brickyard Blues. And when I heard that did it for me. And at the same time, my auntie, Heather, said, hey, have you heard this? And she held up this record. And I said, no. He said, oh, you need to hear this. And I guess it must have come out, because that must have been about 1973, so I was about 11 years old. And she put on Right Place, Wrong Time by Dr. John. She turned me on to Dr. John. Once again, I had no connection or no understanding that there was a link. And he had this song on that record, went, I'm feeling kind of sad and lonely. Lost my sweet one and only. You know I'm gonna find my baby. I don't mean no maybe, gonna find her. Gonna find my baby, gonna bring her home with me. Swore that she will never leave me. Now she's gone away to grieve me. You know I was fast asleep when she began on midnight creeping. Gonna find her. Gonna find my baby. Gonna bring her home with me. There it is again. And so and I started looking at paying more attention and reading all the notes, all the line notes, and then this name just keeps coming up, Allen Toussaint, Allen Toussaint. It was Allen Toussaint that arranged and produced that record, and it's probably him playing the piano on that track too. And then my Uncle Bruce came in one day and said, hey, have you checked this out? You should check out this guy. And he hands me an Allen Toussaint album. And I'd never heard an Allen Toussaint album. I recognized the name. And Yeah, so my introduction to Allen Toussaint was indirectly through my family and through stuff I just found myself. And when I got to New Orleans, you never saw Allen Toussaint. He'd hardly ever do gigs. And when you did see him, he looked like Liberace. He had a big sort of sparkly, spangly suit on and a great big band. And it was always a very practiced, well-rehearsed kind of show. But you could tell he wasn't really comfortable doing it. But then one time I opened up for him in New York when I lived in New York. And I had a killing band at the time with Ricky Sebastian and Chulo Gatewood, some other New Orleans musicians. And we opened up and we tore the roof off this place. It was a really good gig. And so I think when Allen came on, he felt like, I guess he felt like, you do what you do when you come on after you just followed it. Happens to me sometimes. You get a really killing opening band, so you come on with your best game. And he got really hot and he took off his jacket and then he took off his shirt and he had a string vest. What do you call a vest here?
Like a tank.
Like a tank top kind of thing.
Okay.
And he was busting a sweat and started really digging out. It's the only time I've ever seen him do that. I wouldn't say he didn't lose his cool, because he's always really cool. And he was even cooler, in my opinion, for doing this. But it was like, all right, let's get stuck in. And that was the only time I've ever seen him really do that. And he played really hard and was really good. But I liked him. He was very nice to me.